There's a stretch of road in northern New Mexico territory where sheriffs don't patrol, where even the bravest lawmen turn back at the boundary markers, where the Navajo people leave offerings and whisper prayers before crossing. They call it the Reservation Road, but the Navajo have another name for it, a name they won't speak aloud after sunset. It translates roughly to where the skin changers hunt. My name is Deputy Marshal Elizabeth Hawthorne, and in October of 1889, I watched my mentor, Sheriff John Blackwood, the toughest lawman in New Mexico territory, ride down that road at sunset, chasing a suspect. He was supposed to be gone for 2 hours. He never came back. Not as himself, anyway. What returned 3 days later? It looked like Sheriff Blackwood. It spoke with his voice. It knew things only he could know. But it wasn't him. It couldn't be him, because I saw what it did when it thought no one was watching. I saw it move in ways no human body should move. I saw its eyes reflect light like an animal's, and I heard it speaking to something in the darkness, speaking in a language that predated English by thousands of years. The Navajo have a word for what took Sheriff Blackwood's place: Ye Naldeloshi, the Skinwalker, a witch who has committed the ultimate taboo, murdered a blood relative to gain the power to wear the skins of animals and humans alike. The Navajo police warned us. They told us, if you see someone you know walking alone on the reservation road at night, do not approach them, do not speak to them, do not acknowledge them, because it is not who you think it is. And if you let it know you've recognized the deception, it will come for you next. I didn't listen. I confronted the thing wearing Sheriff Blackwood's face, and that's when it smiled at me. A smile too wide, with too many teeth, and said in a voice that was almost his, "You should have stayed silent, Elizabeth. Now I have to wear your skin too." This is the story of what hunts on the reservation road. This is why Sheriff John Blackwood's body was never found. And this is why I sleep with a shotgun loaded with shells blessed by a Navajo medicine man. Because the Skinwalker is still out there, still hunting, still wearing faces that aren't its own. And it knows where I live.
Farmington, New Mexico Territory, October 1889. The town sat at the edge of Navajo land, where the San Juan River cut through high desert country, painted in shades of red and gold. It was a rough frontier town of maybe 800 people, miners, ranchers, traders, and those who serviced them. The kind of place where violence was common, and law was whatever the man with the badge said it was. Sheriff John Blackwood had been the law in San Juan County for 12 years. He was 51 years old, built like a bear, with a gray beard and eyes that could stare down a charging bull. He'd been a Texas Ranger before the Civil War, a Union cavalry officer during it, and a lawman ever since. He was fair but hard, respected by honest folk and feared by criminals. I was his deputy, the first and only female deputy marshal in New Mexico Territory. My appointment had caused quite a scandal. Women weren't supposed to wear badges, carry guns, or enforce the law, but Sheriff Blackwood didn't care about supposed to. He cared about competence. "You can outshoot half the men in this county," he'd told me when he pinned the badge on my vest. "You can outthink the other half, and you don't drink, which puts you ahead of damn near everyone. You'll do fine, Deputy Hawthorne." I was 28 years old, unmarried, a widow, actually, my husband having died in a mining accident 3 years prior. And I'd learned to shoot from my father, who'd been a sharpshooter in the war. I could track, I could ride, and I could handle myself in a fight. Sheriff Blackwood treated me like any other deputy, which meant he expected excellence and didn't tolerate excuses. On October 18, 1889, a crime was reported that would lead us onto the Reservation Road. A trader named Samuel Whitmore had been robbed on the road between Farmington and Shiprock. 3 men had ambushed him, stolen his wagon full of goods worth about $500, and beaten him badly enough that he spent 2 days unconscious. When Whitmore finally came to and gave his statement, he identified one of the robbers, a man named Jacob Reese, a known troublemaker who'd been run out of Durango, Colorado for theft and assault. "Reese has family on the reservation," Sheriff Blackwood said, studying a map of the territory. "Navajo family. His mother was Navajo, father was white. He'll run there. He knows we can't follow on to reservation land without permission from the tribal police." This was the complicated reality of law enforcement in 1889. The Navajo Reservation was sovereign territory. U.S. Marshals and county sheriffs had no jurisdiction there without explicit permission from the tribal authorities. And the tribal police, while professional and effective, didn't always cooperate with white lawmen, especially when the suspect had Navajo blood. "We need to coordinate with Captain Begay," I said. Captain Henry Begay was the head of the Navajo Tribal Police, a sharp, no-nonsense lawman who'd worked with Sheriff Blackwood before. "Get permission to pursue on to reservation land." "That'll take days," Blackwood said. "By then, Reese will be long gone. No, we'll ride to the boundary, see if we can spot him, and if we do, we'll signal for tribal police backup." It was a reasonable plan. It should have worked. But we didn't account for what else was on that road. We left Farmington at 3 in the afternoon on October 19th. Sheriff Blackwood, myself, and a young deputy named Thomas Yazzie, a Navajo man in his early 20s who served as our liaison with the tribal police. Tom was quiet, competent, and deeply knowledgeable about Navajo culture and territory. The reservation road ran northwest from Farmington, paralleling the San Juan River for about 15 miles before cutting inland toward Shiprock. It was a rough wagon road, barely maintained, running through high desert country dotted with sagebrush, juniper, and strange rock formations that the Navajo considered sacred. As we rode, Tom became increasingly uneasy. He kept looking at the sky, at the shadows, at the road ahead. "Something wrong?" I asked. "The light," he said. "We need to be off this road before sunset." "Why?" Sheriff Blackwood asked. Tom hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "This stretch of road, it's not safe after dark, especially this time of year. The Navajo people avoid it. There are things that hunt here." "What kind of things?" I pressed. "Things I shouldn't speak about, especially not out here. But please, Sheriff, if we don't find Reese in the next hour, we should turn back. We can come back tomorrow with tribal police escort." Sheriff Blackwood, to his credit, didn't mock Tom's concerns. He'd worked with Navajo people long enough to respect their beliefs, but he was also a practical man who believed in what he could see and shoot. "We'll be careful," he said, "but we've got a job to do. If Reese is out here, we need to find him." We continued riding as the sun sank lower, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. The shadows grew longer. The temperature dropped, and the silence, God, the silence was oppressive. No birds, no insects, no wind, just the sound of our horses' hooves on hard-packed earth. Around 5:30, with maybe 30 minutes of daylight left, we spotted someone on the road ahead, a man on foot, moving quickly, carrying what looked like a bundle of goods. "That's him," Sheriff Blackwood said, pulling out his binoculars. "That's Jacob Reese. I'd recognize that bastard's walk anywhere." "Sheriff, please," Tom said urgently. "The sun is setting. We need to—" "You two head back. I'll pursue on my own. Just keep him in sight until tribal police can pick him up. I won't cross the boundary without permission. I'm coming with you." "No," Blackwood said firmly. "That's an order, Deputy. You and Tom head back to Farmington. I'll be fine. I've been doing this since you were born." It was the last conversation I had with the real John Blackwood. He spurred his horse forward, chasing after the figure on the road. Tom and I watched him ride away, silhouetted against the setting sun. "We should follow him," I said. "No," Tom said, his voice tight with fear. "We should not. The sheriff, he's made his choice. We cannot help him now." "What are you talking about?" Tom looked at me, and I saw genuine terror in his eyes. "That man he's chasing, I don't think it's Jacob Reese. I think it's bait, and the sheriff just took it." We waited at the boundary marker, a cairn of stones marked with Navajo symbols, for 2 hours. The sun set, the stars came out, the temperature dropped below freezing, and Sheriff Blackwood didn't return. Finally, Tom said, "We need to get help. We need to contact Captain Begay and organize a search party. But we cannot go onto that road in the darkness. We cannot." So we rode back to Farmington, and I spent the worst night of my life wondering what had happened to Sheriff Blackwood, wondering if he was hurt, lost, or worse. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come.
At dawn on October 20th, a search party assembled in Farmington. Myself, Tom Yazzie, Captain Henry Begay, and 3 tribal police officers, and 4 civilian volunteers. We rode out to the Reservation Road, following Sheriff Blackwood's trail. We found his horse first. About 5 miles past the boundary marker, the animal was standing by the side of the road, reins dragging, saddle empty. The horse was uninjured but terrified, eyes rolling, ears flat, refusing to move further down the road. "Something scared it badly," Captain Begay observed. He was a man in his 40s, lean and weathered, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "A horse this well-trained doesn't spook easily." We found Sheriff Blackwood's tracks in the dust, his distinctive boot prints, size 12 with a worn left heel. The tracks showed he'd dismounted and continued on foot, following other tracks, smaller tracks, barefoot tracks. "Those aren't Jacob Reese's tracks," I said. "Reese is a big man. These are small, almost child-sized." "Not a child," one of the tribal officers said quietly. His name was Jim Nez, and he was studying the tracks with obvious unease. "Look at the spacing. Look at how deep they are. Whatever made these was moving fast. Too fast. And it was heavy, much heavier than the size suggests."
We followed the tracks for another mile. Then we found where Sheriff Blackwood had stopped. There was a scuffle in the dirt, boot prints, disturbed earth, signs of a struggle. And blood. Not much, but enough to make my heart sink. He was attacked here, Captain Bigay said. But there's not enough blood for a fatal wound, and the tracks continue. He pointed. Both sets, the barefoot tracks and the boot prints, walking side by side, like they were walking together. That doesn't make sense, I said. If he was attacked, why would he walk away with his attacker? No one answered. Because the alternative, that Sheriff Blackwood had been subdued, controlled, or worse, was too disturbing to voice. The tracks led to an abandoned hogan, a traditional Navajo dwelling, about a quarter-mile off the road. The structure was old, partially collapsed, clearly unused for years, but there were signs of recent activity. A fire pit with warm ashes, disturbed earth, and a smell. God, the smell was terrible, like rotting meat and something else, something chemical and wrong. "Don't go in there," Jim Nez said suddenly. "Please, don't go in there." "Why not?" I asked. "Because this place, it's been used for dark purposes, witchcraft. I can feel it. We all can." He gestured to the other Navajo men, who were all keeping their distance from the hogan, their faces grim. But I had to know. I had to find out what happened to Sheriff Blackwood. So I drew my pistol and entered the hogan. Inside it was dark and cold. The smell was overwhelming, and scattered on the dirt floor were things. Bones. Animal bones, mostly. Coyote, wolf, deer, but also human bones. Old bones, bleached white, and skins. Animal pelts, stretched and dried, and something else, something that made my stomach turn. A human skin, or what looked like one, stretched out like a pelt, dried and preserved, empty. Like a suit someone could wear. "Jesus Christ!" I whispered. "Get out!" Tom's voice came from behind me. "Deputy Hawthorne, get out of there right now!" I stumbled out of the hogan, gasping for fresh air. Captain Bigay looked at me with an expression of profound sadness. "You saw..." It wasn't a question. "What is this place? What happened here?" "This is a place where a Yi Naldolshi, a skinwalker, practices its craft. A witch who has killed a family member to gain dark power, the power to wear the skins of animals, to become them, to hunt as they hunt. That's just superstition," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Captain Bigay asked. "Then explain the tracks. Explain the skins. Explain why Sheriff Blackwood's trail leads here, and then stops."
He was right. Sheriff Blackwood's boot prints led into the hogan, but they didn't lead out. Instead, there were other tracks leaving the hogan. Animal tracks, coyote tracks, and mixed with them, occasionally, human tracks. But not the same human tracks. Different, larger, Size 12 with a worn left heel. Sheriff Blackwood's tracks, but wrong. Spaced too far apart, too deep, as if whatever was making them was sometimes walking on 2 legs and sometimes on 4. "No," I said. "No, that's impossible." "We need to leave," Jimenez said urgently. "We need to leave now, before it comes back." We rode back to Farmington in silence. I was in shock, trying to process what I'd seen, trying to find a rational explanation. Sheriff Blackwood had been attacked. He'd been killed, maybe. His body had been hidden, and some crazy person, was trying to make it look like supernatural nonsense. That's what I told myself. That's what I needed to believe. But that night, as I sat in the sheriff's office writing my report, I heard something outside, scratching at the door, and a voice, Sheriff Blackwood's voice, calling my name. "Elizabeth, Elizabeth, let me in. It's cold out here. Please let me in." I grabbed my pistol and opened the door. And there he was, Sheriff John Blackwood, standing on the boardwalk, looking exactly as he had when he'd ridden away. Same clothes, same face, same gray beard, same eyes. But something was wrong. He was standing too still, not breathing hard, despite having apparently walked back from the reservation, not shivering, despite the freezing temperature and his lack of a coat. "Sheriff," I said carefully, "where have you been? We've been searching for you." "Got lost, chased that suspect too far, lost my bearings in the dark, just found my way back." "Your horse came back yesterday, without you." "Spooked by something, ran off. I had to walk." Every word he said was plausible. Every detail was right. But something was fundamentally wrong. The way he stood, the way he looked at me, not quite meeting my eyes, like he was studying me, memorizing me. The way he smiled, just a fraction too wide. "You should come inside. Get warm. I'll send for the doctor." "No doctor," he said quickly. "I'm fine. Just tired. I'll go home. Get some rest. See you in the morning, deputy." He turned and walked away, and I watched him go. His gait was wrong, just slightly off, like someone imitating a walk they'd observed but didn't quite understand. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. Tom Yazzie had been sitting in the corner, watching. He'd seen the whole thing. "That wasn't him," Tom said quietly. "That wasn't Sheriff Blackwood." "I know! That's what makes it so dangerous. The Yi Nal Doloshi doesn't just wear animal skins. It can wear human skins, too. It can become the person, take their face, their voice, their memories, everything." "Then where's the real Sheriff Blackwood?" Tom looked at me with infinite sadness. "Dead, deputy. The Skinwalker killed him, took his skin, and now it's wearing him."
The thing wearing Sheriff Blackwood's face came to work the next morning. It sat at his desk, read his reports, gave orders in his voice, and everyone accepted it. Why wouldn't they? It looked like him, sounded like him, knew everything he knew. Everyone except Tom and me. We knew, and we watched. Over the next 3 days, I documented everything wrong about the false sheriff. Small things, subtle things, things no one else would notice. He didn't eat. I watched him at lunch. He'd order food, move it around his plate, but but never actually put it in his mouth. When he thought no one was looking, he'd scrape the food into the trash. He didn't blink. Not normally, anyway. He'd go minutes without blinking, then blink rapidly several times, like he was remembering he was supposed to. He didn't breathe right. His chest would rise and fall, but the rhythm was wrong. Too regular, like someone manually operating bellows. And his behavior was off. Sheriff Blackwood had been gruff but kind. This thing was cold, calculating. It looked at people like a predator studying prey. It smiled too much, and the smiles never reached its eyes. It was especially interested in me. It would watch me when it thought I wasn't looking, study my movements, my mannerisms, the way I walked, talked, gestured. "It's learning you," Tom said when I mentioned this. "Memorizing you. That's what they do before they take someone. They study their target, learn everything about them, so when they wear the skin, the imitation is perfect." I needed proof. Something concrete. Something that would convince others that this wasn't Sheriff Blackwood. So I started investigating. I went to his house, a small cabin on the edge of town. The real Sheriff Blackwood had lived alone since his wife died 10 years ago. The cabin was neat, organized, full of his possessions. I searched it thoroughly, and I found something disturbing. Fresh dirt on the floor, a trail of it leading from the front door to the bedroom. And in the bedroom, the bed hadn't been slept in, but there were scratches on the wooden floor, deep scratches, like from claws. That night, I hid across the street from the cabin and watched. Around midnight, the false sheriff returned home. It entered the cabin, lit a lamp, and for a few minutes everything seemed normal. Then the lamp went out, and through the window, in the moonlight, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The figure inside the cabin changed. Its posture shifted, becoming hunched. Its movements became jerky, inhuman. And then it dropped to all fours and began pacing the cabin like a caged animal. I watched for 2 hours. Sometimes it was on 2 legs, sometimes on 4. Sometimes it would stand at the window, perfectly still, staring out at the night. And once it turned its head toward where I was hiding, and its eyes reflected the moonlight, like an animal's eyes, glowing yellow-green in the darkness. I didn't move. I barely breathed, and after a moment it turned away and continued its pacing. At dawn, it stood up, straightened its clothes, and became Sheriff Blackwood again. Perfect imitation. Perfect disguise. I went to Captain Begay the next morning. He was the only person besides Tom who might believe me. I told him everything I'd observed. "You need to kill it," Captain Begay said bluntly, "before it kills you, before it takes your skin." "I can't just shoot someone who looks like Sheriff Blackwood. I'd be hanged for murder." "Then you need to expose it, force it to reveal its true nature in front of witnesses, so everyone can see what it really is." "How?" "Skinwalkers have weaknesses. They cannot cross certain barriers, they cannot touch certain sacred objects, and they cannot resist certain challenges. If you call it its true name, if you accuse it of being Yinaldolushi in front of others, it must either prove you wrong or reveal itself through refusal." We devised a plan. Captain Begay would come to Farmington on official business. He would bring a medicine man, a hatayi, who could identify a skinwalker through ceremony. We would confront the false sheriff in front of the town council, forcing it to either submit to the test or reveal itself through refusal. It was dangerous. If we were wrong, if this really was Sheriff Blackwood, just traumatized or ill, we'd destroy his reputation and probably lose our jobs. If we were right, the Skinwalker might attack rather than be exposed. But we had no choice, because I'd noticed something terrifying. The false sheriff was spending more and more time watching me, following me, and I'd found tracks outside my boarding house window. Barefoot tracks in the dirt, leading up to my window and then away.
The town council meeting was scheduled for October 25th. Captain Begay arrived that morning with 2 tribal police officers and an elderly Navajo man named Hosteen Yazi. No relation to Tom, though they knew each other. Hosteen Yazi was a respected Hatali, a medicine man who specialized in protection ceremonies and identifying dark magic. The false sheriff seemed uneasy when he saw them. He kept his distance, watching from across the street as they entered the town hall. "It knows," Tom whispered to me. "It knows why they're here." The town council consisted of 5 men: the mayor, a banker, a mine owner, a rancher, and a merchant. They were practical men, skeptical of anything that couldn't be measured or counted. Convincing them would be difficult. "Gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I have reason to believe that the man we think is Sheriff John Blackwood is not who he appears to be." Silence. Then the mayor, a portly man named Henderson, laughed. "Deputy Hawthorne, have you lost your mind? That's John Blackwood. We've all known him for years." "Have you spoken to him since he returned? Really spoken to him? Noticed anything different?" I presented my observations. The lack of eating, the strange breathing, the unnatural stillness, the scratches in his cabin, the tracks outside my window. The council members looked skeptical, but then Captain Begay spoke. "In Navajo tradition, there are witches called Yi-Naldloshi, skinwalkers. They have the power to wear the skins of animals and humans, to become them, to take their place. I believe such a witch killed Sheriff Blackwood and is now wearing his form." "That's ridiculous," the banker said. "You're talking about fairy tales." "Then let him prove it," Hosteen Yazi said, speaking for the first time. His English was accented but clear. "Let him submit to a test. If he is truly John Blackwood, he has nothing to fear." That's when the false sheriff entered the room. It had been listening outside, and now it walked in with perfect confidence, perfect posture, perfect imitation of a man insulted by false accusations. "What's this about?" it said in Sheriff Blackwood's voice. "What test?" Hosteen Yazi stood up and began speaking in Navajo. He pulled out a small pouch and sprinkled something on the floor. Corn pollen, I later learned, blessed and prepared for protection ceremonies. The false sheriff stopped walking. It stared at the line of pollen on the floor between us and it, and for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, its face changed. The features shifted, the eyes glowed, the mouth opened too wide. Then it was Sheriff Blackwood again, smiling.
"I'm not stepping over that," it said, "not because I'm afraid of your superstitions, but because I won't dignify this insult with compliance." "You're not John Blackwood," I said, my voice loud and clear. "You're Yi Neldloshi. You killed him, you took his skin, and now you're wearing him." The room erupted in protests and arguments, but the false sheriff just smiled at me. That too wide smile, and it said, in a voice that was almost Blackwood, but not quite, "Prove it." That's when Tom Yazzie did something incredibly brave. He pulled out his pistol and fired not at the false sheriff, but at the floor in front of it. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, and in the moment of chaos that followed, the false sheriff's control slipped, just for a second, but it was enough. Its face rippled, its form blurred, and we all saw, everyone in that room saw what it really was underneath.
The thing that had been wearing Sheriff Blackwood's face screamed. It was a sound no human throat could make. Part animal howl, part human shriek, part something that had never been either. The sound shattered 2 windows and made everyone in the room clap their hands over their ears. Then it changed. The skin, Sheriff Blackwood's skin, split down the back like a coat being removed, and what emerged was a nightmare. It was roughly human-shaped, but wrong in every detail. Gray-white flesh stretched over 2 long bones, limbs that bent at extra joints, hands that ended in black claws like obsidian knives, a face that was almost human, but with a mouth that opened impossibly wide, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. And its eyes, God, its eyes were the worst, yellow-green and glowing, filled with ancient malice and insatiable hunger. The council members screamed and ran for the exits. The Skinwalker grabbed the banker, a man named Thornton, and threw him across the room with casual strength. Thornton hit the wall and didn't get up. Tom and I drew our pistols and fired. The bullets hit the creature, and it screamed again that it didn't go down. It moved with impossible speed, crossing the room in a blur, heading straight for me. Captain Begay stepped between us, holding something. A ceremonial knife, I realized later, blessed by medicine men. He slashed at the Skinwalker, and where the blade touched its flesh, the creature's skin smoked and burned. The Skinwalker recoiled, hissing. Then it dropped to all fours and bolted for the door, moving like a wolf, like a coyote, like something that had never been fully human. "Don't let it escape," Hosteen Yazzie shouted. "If it gets away, it will hunt you all. It will take your faces one by one." We ran after it. Me, Tom, Captain Begay, and his 2 officers. The Skinwalker was fast, inhumanly fast, but we could track it. It left a trail of that terrible smell, rotting meat and chemicals, and occasional drops of black ichor where Captain Begay's knife had wounded it. It was heading back toward the reservation road, back toward its territory. "We need horses!" I shouted. We grabbed mounts from the livery stable and rode after the creature. It was still on foot, or on all fours sometimes, but it was covering ground at an incredible pace. We followed it out of town, onto the reservation road, into the high desert. The sun was setting. Of course it was. Because that's when these things are strongest, when the boundary between day and night, between human and animal, between our world and theirs, grows thin. "We need to stop it before dark," Captain Begay shouted over the thunder of hooves. "Once night falls, it will have the advantage." We pushed our horses harder.
The Skinwalker was maybe a quarter-mile ahead, a pale shape moving through the sagebrush and juniper, sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes on 4, sometimes seeming to flicker between forms so fast we couldn't tell what it was. It led us to the abandoned hogan, the same one where we'd found the skins and bones, and there it stopped. It turned to face us, standing upright, its 2 long arms hanging at its sides, its glowing eyes fixed on us. "It's waiting for us," Tom said. "This is a trap." "We don't have a choice," I said. "If we let it go, it will keep killing, keep taking people, keep wearing their faces." We dismounted and approached on foot, weapons ready. Captain Bagay held his blessed knife. Hosteen Yazi was chanting in Navajo, a protection prayer. Tom and I had our pistols. The 2 tribal officers had rifles. The Skinwalker watched us come, and it smiled. That terrible, too wide smile. That's when we realized our mistake. There wasn't just one Skinwalker. There were 3. They came from the hogan, from the shadows, from places they shouldn't have been able to hide. 2 more of them, both in animal form, one like a massive coyote, one like a wolf but wrong, too large, with those same glowing eyes. "It's a pack!" Captain Bagay shouted. "They hunt in packs!" The wolf thing lunged at one of the tribal officers, a young man named Ben Sosi. He fired his rifle, hit him square in the chest, but it kept coming. It bore him to the ground and we heard him screaming. The coyote thing circled us, moving too fast, darting in and out, trying to separate us. Tom fired at it, missed, fired again, hit it in the leg. It yelped like a real coyote, but deeper, more resonant, and limped back.
The first Skinwalker, the one that had worn Sheriff Blackwood's face, charged at me. I fired 3 times, hitting it twice. It staggered but kept coming. I dove aside, rolled, came up firing. Captain Bagay was there, his blessed knife flashing. He caught the Skinwalker across the chest, and where the blade touched, the creature's flesh burned and smoked. It screamed and backed away. "The knife works," I shouted. "The blessed weapons work." Hosteen Yazi was still chanting, his voice rising and falling in complex rhythms. And I realized he wasn't just praying, he was performing a ceremony, a banishing ceremony. The air around us began to shimmer like heat haze. The Skinwalkers felt it too. They began to move erratically, their forms flickering, unstable. The wolf thing released Ben Tosi and backed away, whimpering. The coyote thing was limping badly, black ichor dripping from its wounded leg. And the first Skinwalker, the one that had been Sheriff Blackwood, was changing again. But this time, it wasn't voluntary. Its form was breaking down, the stolen skin sloughing off, revealing the twisted thing beneath. "Now!" Hosteen Yazi shouted in English. "Destroy them now, while they're weakened!" Captain Bagay rushed forward with his knife. He drove it into the first Skinwalker's chest, and the creature shrieked. Its body convulsed, and then it began to burn, not with normal fire, but with a cold, blue-white flame that consumed it from within. Tom shot the coyote thing in the head. It went down and didn't get up. The second tribal officer, a man named Jim Nez, shot the wolf thing multiple times until it finally collapsed. Within minutes, all 3 Skinwalkers were dead or dying. their bodies burned with that strange cold fire, reducing them to ash and bone. We stood in the gathering darkness, breathing hard, covered in sweat and blood and that terrible black ichor. Ben Tosi was badly wounded, but alive. The rest of us were shaken, but intact. "Is it over?" I asked. "For now," Hosteen Yazi said. "These three are destroyed, but there are others. There are always others. The Yin al-Doshi are not a single creature, but a corruption, a choice. Anyone who commits the ultimate taboo, who kills a blood relative for power, can become one." "So this could happen again," Tom said. "Yes," Captain Begay confirmed. "That's why we patrol the reservation road, why we leave warnings, why we try to stop people from entering Skinwalker territory. Because some of them are still out there, still hunting, still wearing faces that aren't their own." We searched the Hogan one more time, and this time we found what we'd missed before, a hidden chamber beneath the floor. And in that chamber, wrapped in a tarp, was Sheriff John Blackwood's body. He'd been dead for days, killed quickly, mercifully at least. The Skinwalker had taken his skin, his clothes, his badge, everything, and it had worn him so perfectly that even people who'd known him for years had been fooled. We brought his body back to Farmington. We gave him a proper burial, and we told the truth about what had happened, or as much of the truth as people could accept. The town council offered me Sheriff Blackwood's position. I was the senior deputy. I'd solved the case, and I'd survived an encounter with something most people didn't believe existed. I accepted, not because I wanted the job, but because someone needed to do it. Someone who understood what was really out there. Someone who would take the warnings seriously. I made changes immediately. I established a formal liaison with the Navajo Tribal Police. I hired Tom Yazi as my chief deputy. I brought in Hosteen Yazi as a consultant, paying him from the county budget to advise on cases involving Navajo land and customs. And I created new protocols for the reservation road. No patrols after dark. No solo pursuits onto reservation land. Mandatory coordination with tribal police for any operations near the boundary. Some people thought I was being overcautious, superstitious. But the people who'd been in that town hall, who'd seen the Skinwalker's true form, they understood. They'd seen the proof. Over the following months, we investigated the 3 Skinwalkers we'd killed. We identified 2 of them. Both had been Navajo men who'd disappeared years ago, men who'd been suspected of practicing witchcraft. The third, the one that had taken Sheriff Blackwood, remained unidentified. Its original form was too degraded, too changed by years of wearing stolen skins. We found its collection. In a cave near the Hogan, we discovered dozens of skins, animal and human, preserved and stored. Each one represented a life taken, an identity stolen. We burned them all in a ceremony supervised by Hosteen Yazi, releasing whatever spirits might have been trapped in them. Ben Sosi recovered from his wounds, though he bore terrible scars. He left the tribal police and moved to Arizona, unable to continue working in the area where he'd nearly died. Tom Yazi stayed on as my deputy,
He was invaluable. His knowledge of Navajo culture and his connections with the tribal police made our cooperation seamless. And he understood the dangers in a way most white lawmen never would. Captain Begay and I became close colleagues. We worked together on dozens of cases over the years, and he taught me much about Navajo beliefs and the supernatural threats that existed in the territory. But I never fully recovered from the experience. I had nightmares for years. I'd dream of Sheriff Blackwood calling my name, of opening the door to find him standing there with that too wide smile. I'd dream of the Skinwalker wearing my face, walking through town, and no one realizing it wasn't me. I became hypervigilant. I'd study people's faces, looking for tells, for signs that they weren't who they appeared to be. I'd watch for the wrong breathing patterns, the unnatural stillness, the predatory way of looking at others. Tom told me I was developing what the Navajo call ghost sickness, a condition that affects people who've had too much contact with the dead or with dark magic. Hosteen Yazi performed a ceremony for me, an enemy way ceremony, designed to restore balance and drive away the lingering effects of evil. It helped, but it didn't cure me completely, because I knew the truth now. I knew what was possible, and I could never unknow it. Over my years as sheriff, I dealt with 3 more Skinwalker cases. Each time we were more prepared. Each time we worked with tribal police and medicine men. Each time we managed to identify and stop the creature before it killed too many people. But I knew there were others we didn't catch. Disappearances that were never solved. People who vanished on the reservation road and were never found. Cases where someone returned from the desert changed in ways their families couldn't quite articulate, but knew in their bones. The Skinwalkers are patient, they're intelligent, and they're very, very good at hiding in plain sight. I made it my mission to educate other lawmen about the threat. I wrote reports. I gave presentations at law enforcement conferences. Most people dismissed me as eccentric or superstitious, but a few, usually those who'd worked in areas with large Native American populations, listened. They'd had their own experiences, their own unexplained cases. We formed an informal network, sharing information about suspected Skinwalker activity, coordinating with tribal police across multiple territories. It wasn't official. It wasn't recognized by the federal government, but it was necessary. Knowledge comes with a price. Once you know that Skinwalkers exist, you can never feel completely safe again. You look at strangers differently. You question whether the person you're talking to is really who they appear to be. You notice small inconsistencies that others miss. It's a lonely way to live, but it's necessary, because the alternative, ignorance, gets people killed. I served as sheriff of San Juan County for 23 years, until 1912. I trained deputies. I established protocols. I built relationships with tribal authorities that lasted decades, and I made sure that Sheriff John Blackwood's death meant something, that his sacrifice led to better protection for everyone in the territory. When I finally retired, I didn't leave the area. I stayed in Farmington, in a small house on the edge of town, close enough to help if needed, close enough to keep watch. Because the reservation road is still there, the Skinwalkers are still there, and someone needs to remember. Someone needs to warn others.
I am Elizabeth Hawthorne. I'm 71 years old now, It's been 43 years since Sheriff John Blackwood rode down the reservation road and never came back. 43 years since I learned that monsters are real. The world has changed. New Mexico became a state in 1912. The frontier is gone. Automobiles have replaced horses. Electric lights have replaced oil lamps. The Old West is dying, becoming history, becoming legend. But the Skinwalkers remain, because they're not part of the Old West. They're older than that, older than America, older than European contact. They're part of the land itself, part of traditions and beliefs that stretch back thousands of years. Just last month, a tourist from back east disappeared on the road to Shiprock. His car was found abandoned, engine still running, door open. No sign of struggle, no body, just gone. The tribal police know what happened. I know what happened, but the official report will say, missing person, presumed dead, cause unknown. Because how do you explain skinwalkers to people who don't believe? How do you tell them that the person they're looking for might walk back into town tomorrow wearing their own face and no one will know it's not really them? If you ever find yourself in northern New Mexico, near the Navajo Reservation, you'll see signs warning you to stay on main roads, to avoid certain areas after dark, to respect tribal boundaries. Listen to those warnings. They're not suggestions, they're not superstitions, they're survival instructions written in blood and hard experience. Don't go on to the reservation road after dark. Don't follow strangers into the desert. Don't approach people you know if they're acting strangely, if something feels wrong, if your instincts are screaming danger. I never married again after my first husband died. I never had children. I devoted my life to law enforcement and to protecting people from threats they didn't know existed. Was it worth it? I don't know. I saved lives. I stopped monsters. But I also lived in constant fear, constant vigilance, constant awareness of the darkness that exists just beyond civilization. I've written everything down, every case, every encounter, every lesson learned. I've given copies to the tribal police, to trusted colleagues, to anyone who might need the information. Because I won't be here forever, and someone needs to continue the watch. Someone needs to remember that skinwalkers are real, that they're dangerous, and that they're still out there. The most important thing I learned in 43 years of dealing with skinwalkers is this: they're not mindless monsters. They're intelligent, they're patient, they're strategic. They study their prey, they learn, they adapt, and they're always hungry, not just for flesh, but for identity. For the ability to move through the world wearing faces that aren't their own, for the power that comes from being able to become anyone, to infiltrate anywhere, to hide in simple sight. That's what makes them so dangerous, not their claws or their teeth or their supernatural abilities, but their intelligence, their patience, their perfect mimicry. Sheriff John Blackwood was a good man, a brave man, a man who dedicated his life to protecting others.
And he died because he didn't believe the warnings, because he thought his gun and his badge and his experience made him safe from things he didn't understand. Don't make his mistake. Don't let pride or skepticism or rationality blind you to the reality of what exists in this world. There are things older than civilization, things that don't care about your laws or your logic or your disbelief. I'm an old woman now. I don't have much time left. But before I die, I need to make sure the warning is heard. I need to make sure people understand. The reservation road is still there. The Skinwalkers are still there, and they're still hunting. If you see someone you know walking alone on a desert road at night, don't approach them. Don't call out to them. Don't acknowledge them. Because it might not be who you think it is. And if they smile at you, if they smile too wide, with too many teeth, run and don't look back. Because the Skinwalker has already chosen its next face to wear. And it might be yours.